Good morning, Greene County. Everybody, welcome to the Financial Huddle. It's been 2 years since our last Financial Huddle. You guys recovered? Okay. So Financial Huddles in the great game of business, they have a Financial Huddle every week. At the county, we thought we would let you anticipate, look forward to something. So we made the Financial Huddles only 1 week out of the month, or that's how the budget office likes to do it. So, make your own judgments. But today, we're going to do our very first Financial Huddle, and you're like, well, wait a minute. In the past, we had to do projections. We had to send things into the budget office. There was a big cumbersome project that took a couple of weeks of time out of the budget office's thing every month, but we've kind of changed that up a little bit. So we'll get to that, but let's just jump right in here because there's a lot to talk about, and there's 1,000 things going on up here, but we only got 30 minutes, so I know only about 250 of those things are going to come out. So Financial Huddles. Critical number. What's a critical number? So we're going back to the baseline here and talking about the great game of government. Critical number is basically what you build the whole game around and how you define winning. And they've defined it as something that represents a weakness or a vulnerability that, if not addressed or corrected, will negatively impact the overall performance and long-term security of the business. So because of that, we want to make sure that we measure it so that we can manage it. Okay, so what did we do in the past? Oh, there you go. So in the past, actually 2 years ago, we were measuring GR balance. And so 2 years ago, in August of 2020, our GR balance was, and this, I'm pointing to the number here because everybody's looking backwards at these other screens, right? So our GR balance was a combined $26.6 million. And we had a 90-day reserve figure calculated, 25% of 17.4. So 2 years ago, I think we can say we were winning. We had put something in place with the new tax. Part of that new tax was to provide us a cash balance for reserves, and we were doing that. And so 2 years ago, we were winning. So now that we're winning on this, do we change our critical number? That's something for the group to talk about and decide. Oh, by the way, the answer is GR cash. Okay, so I don't quite know the PowerPoint as well as I should. So right now, at the beginning of 2022, our projected cash balances, at the beginning of 2022, we had a total GR cash balance of 41.8 million. Well, wait a minute, 2 years ago, we were at 26.6. So yeah, that buildup has continued. That was a planned buildup. However, in our budget for 2022, we have planned spend downs in GR1 of 2.7 million and in GR2 of 4.5 million. So that's a total of 7.2 million spend down of that cash balance of 41.8. So how sustainable is that? Not. So in 5.8 years, if we repeated the 2022 budget every year, we wouldn't make it 6 years. We'd be out of cash. Yes, this is beginning to sound like a typical budget presentation. I'll give you that. Okay, so our GR1 balance, we had planned for when the jail got fully staffed that we would have excess vacancy to where we would be balanced. So we're still in that process, but when we talk about GR1 balance for 2023, we need excess revenues and expense savings so that we become balanced. So that $6.9 million balance that we were showing at the beginning of 2022, we're actually hopeful that we keep that balance by the end of 2022 through savings and revenue differences, because we believe that we're going to need most of that balance by 2024 to satisfy and pay off our bond for the NIDS. That's just a basic financial plan right now, not been approved, but that's what we anticipate and plan for. So we want to keep GR1 balanced going forward. Now, for GR2, we've made a 20-year plan. And that plan depicted us building cash balance, which is exactly what we've been doing, and then spending it down through 2030 until we pay off some of our debt and start building the cash balance again. So I'm going to put our auditor on the spot with a very hard question. Cindy, how do we feel about debt?
We really don't like it.
No, we hate debt. We hate debt, and this next slide is going to make you hate debt also. The only good thing about debt is that it lets us build fantastic buildings, do great things for our citizens by improving our infrastructure. But to talk about debt. Okay. So in 2020, we were already paying the full payments on our 2018 bond, but we were still being able to build our cash balance in 2020 and 2021. So our total debt service for all of our debt in 2020 was $8,586,000. 2021, $9,936,000. 2022, we had issued a couple more bonds in 21, but we only paid interest in them in 2022. That's $11.5 million. So this is the year, this next year, 2023. All of our bonds have been put in place. Lord help us if we ever want to issue more debt, because I'm just going to walk away. And we got full interest and full principal payments starting in 2023. So in 2023, we jump up to $18 million worth of debt service. You look at that number, you're like, oh, we're going to get an $18 million loan. No, that's what we pay back on all the loans we already have. So when we were able to build balance in 20 and 21, the debt service represented about 20% of our GR1 and GR2 sales tax at that time. In 2023, when we just estimate our sales tax going forward at 3% a year, that $18 million next year represents 1/3 of every dollar we take in sales tax for GR. 1/3. We did our debt by design in that we have the heaviest payments up front. So when you look at 2024, our debt goes down $400,000. Our percentage goes down to 31%. In 25, goes down another $400,000. We go down another percent. So by 2030, when this whole plan was put together, that we're doing our spend down until 2020 and 2030, and we're able to start building our balance back, we're down to $13.4 million in total debt service. And that becomes, again, 20% of our estimated GR1 and GR2 sales tax. We put this together and we were amazed at the symmetry. So when we put together our plan, we knew we had a turnaround year in 2030. Just so happens debt service becomes 20% of GR1 and GR2 again by that time. So just 1 out of every $5 we get, as opposed to 1 out of every 3. So that's debt service. You know, we really like being able to say employees are our top priority when we do our budget. Obviously, we can't default on debt. So debt gets written off top line. So employees, technically number 2, but we have to do number 1. So, but this 2023 is our hardest year with $18 million in debt service. So from 2023 through 2030, we plan to spend down $14 million in cash. So GR2 was at $34.6 million. We have it going down $34.4 million. So we spend down this, we have the spend down in 2022, and then that leaves us about $30 million. We spend down 14 through 2030, that leaves us with 16 million at the end of 2030 in GR2. That 16% reserve amounts to 15% of the current GR and LEST expenditures. It's actually 20% of current GR. So back when we were playing the old game and we wanted to have 25% in reserves, we're going to be down to 20% by the time we finish, which is still a good number. But our goal number will be 25. So even when we start building cash again in 2030, we're going to be trying to build cash again to get to that 25% reserve figure. So that's why it's important for us to try and make sure we end with at least $16 million by 2030, because That's not quite our goal, but it's going to be a manageable, responsible amount to have. Now, will there be emergencies that happen between 2023 and 2030? Absolutely, and that's why the reserve's there. So we'll have to use it in some places, but we'll have to plan to be able to replenish it in that time too. Okay. So talking about the critical number again, the budget office is not going to define what your critical number is. That's for the wisdom of the crowd, because that's what the great game is all about. But we're presenting a financial huddle. So we've identified 3 vulnerabilities to our long-term stability, to that keeping that $16 million. And so each of us are going to talk about one, so you don't have to hear me for 30 minutes or 25 minutes. So I'll talk about the first one here, sales tax. Sales tax is one of our largest revenue sources, and between 2020 and 2021, sales tax unexpectedly jumped 16.6%. We analyze sales tax to a great extent every month, and I put out an email every month with multiple charts and things that we look at. If anybody wants to see that email, because we'll be talking about sales tax in every financial huddle, you'll see part of that. But if you want the email, just email me, ask me to add you to the list, and we'll send it out because it's available for anybody to see. When we looked at that 16.6% jump, we had a real concern. Is this a one-time thing because of stimulus money coming into the community? Is it going to repeat? And what we found out, our average sales tax growth is only 3%, so that 16.6% jump was gigantic. But what we found out is that it appears to be a sustainable increase in the base. So there's a one-time change in the base that just jumped up. What we're experiencing in our local economy right now is what they call full employment, and we're actually better than full employment. And so we have more people out there spending more money than ever on products, which is good for our sales tax. Now, we talk about the recession, we talk about inflation. Those things hurt consumer buying power. So they're still spending a larger volume than ever, but consumers might be getting less products. So that part of it doesn't hurt our revenues, but as a county, we're a consumer also. So we are concerned about inflation because it hurts our buying power. So with the possibility of recession, it's very important for us to monitor the level of sales tax and to make adjustments if it becomes necessary. And so how we monitor sales tax, like I said, we put out a monthly email that talks about a few things. But what we developed a few years back are these trend lines. Thanks to some information that Justin had been curating for us, we were able to look at and develop these trend lines. So to hit this briefly, the green line is our annual growth in sales tax. So you have a little dotted line here at 0. That doesn't put on the TV screen. So 0%, if it's above 0%, it means you have growing sales tax. If it's below 0%, sales tax is shrinking. So anything above is actually good. We're used to 3% annual growth. So we really want to be anything above that 3% growth line. Now you'll see from, I believe it's October, and this is 16 years worth of history that we've built. One of the things that we use to monitor is we have that blue line, which is a 3-month line. It's a more volatile line, but what we found is when we look at trends, when the blue line crosses the green line, it's an indication that there's a change in direction for sales tax. So we go from a bottom of -7% shrinkage to we start improving and shrinking less. So every time the blue line crosses the green, it's been an indication of a change in direction. So we either start slowing our growth of sales tax or growth of sales tax is increasing. Right now, you'll notice this past year and a half, 2 years, we're well above where we've been historically. So we're in unprecedented categories right now, or times right now. However, that blue line appears mathematically it's going to cross this next month. Don't panic because we're at super high levels of growth. It just means that our super high level of growth that's like close to over 12% is going to start showing that it's going to get a little lower. And so what we have to monitor is how quickly that declines and how far it's going to decline. So hopefully we get an indication that, after the blue and green spread out a little bit, we start seeing the blue and green shrinking again, and it's still in positive territory. Before, in the past, with the previous 3 crosses, we didn't cross until we were below 0%. This last time, we ended up crossing between 1.5% and 2%. So it's possible that when this turns around and goes down, we might not go all the way down negative. We could turn before we go negative, and so we'll always have growth in sales tax. But this is one of our weaknesses that we're monitoring, because sales tax is one of those things that picked up a lot of the expenses in our plan. That unexpected growth in sales tax really took care of some heavier expenses that we ended up getting that changed our plan. As an example, when we look at the original resolution, we had savings from the original plan for jail staff of about $96 million over 20 years. Unfortunately, plans change. And when we got the jail put together, we figured out that for safety's sake and for the morale of detention officers, we needed more staff than what was planned for that $96 million of savings, helping us out with that $150 million budget. So we ended up getting about $34 million worth of savings. Now, sales tax being $4 million higher a year than what we expected really helped us close that gap. But we're relying on sales tax to take care of it. And so that, $3 million out of $4 million in growth is going to be dedicated to making up that difference. So that's why, if this doesn't become a changing base and instead we have a change in that level again, it's a vulnerability or weakness. So that's sales tax. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Cagle, and he'll talk to you about vacancy.
All right. Down button. Set. Down button it is. Vacancy. If you're a department head or an office holder, you've gotten things from me in the past about position budgeting. So that's my department. I really take care of a lot of the position stuff, a lot of the vacancy analysis that goes on. And the reason that it kind of qualifies for us as a critical number is because almost 3/4 of our budget and GR1 and GR2 are dedicated to salaries and benefits. So any small changes in personnel can translate, small percentage changes can translate into big dollar changes, whether it's positive or negative. We always want it to be positive, but we want to analyze that to see if we are saving money, and if so, how much, for a variety of reasons. Beginning in 2018, the year before I got here, vacancy estimates were included for the normal occurrence of personnel turnover and unfilled positions. In 2022, this amounted to nearly $2.5 million in budgeted vacancy, whether it was budgeted formally or it was estimated off-book vacancy. Now, the importance of that is that we are then able to allow a commission the freedom to appropriate for many more budget requests than they could normally otherwise do, $2.5 million worth. And so one of the things that I track through a report that I send out every pay period, right around payday, is a report that shows what we have in vacancy in excess of what we have budgeted. We always want that number to be positive for a variety of reasons. One is that commission at the beginning of the year authorized overtime pay using vacancy savings that is in excess of budget. And this is an effort to, handle all of the unfilled positions that we have, especially with all the new positions that we have at the jail. The employment situation is difficult. It's hard for businesses everywhere to get people hired. And so in order to get staffed what we need to have staffed, we have that incentive in place to be able to pay overtime. And that's only done in excess of whatever has been accumulated above budget. In addition to that, just beginning last year, there were dollar amounts put in place in the budget for incentive pay for night shift work at the jail. And that funding is covered by savings in excess of budget. So that's another use of that positive number. Now, while this is built into the budget, something else that commission did, one of the first decisions that they made during last year's budgeting was to grant a 3% COLA increase across the board, as well as an increase of 3 steps across the board. So there's a 7.5% increase in pay, which
Thank you.
But in addition to that, they also authorized new hiring to come in at step 3 and step 0. Now that is built into the budget, so that's not really something that excess vacancy takes care of, but it's there. Another thing that needs to be taken care of with excess vacancy are departmental requests that come in. It's not really, I don't know how often it is. Sometimes a department may want to make a purchase for a piece of equipment or purchase some training for the department, and they will use vacancy savings for this. Well, the report that I send out hopefully is a clear enough indicator of where departments lie in their ongoing savings, and knowing that they have this positive savings will enable them to make better decisions as far as whether they have the freedom to make those extra purchases. And then finally, a policy use of excess vacancy is our hiring policy. Typically, when we have an employee that resigns and they have a substantial amount of vacation pay or sick pay that is going to be due to them in a final payout, the hiring policy states that that position, in order to remain budget neutral, needs to accumulate enough vacancy to cover the amount of that payout. Well, sometimes it's impractical to leave a position open for however many weeks or months, if it's a large payout, to cover that. Well, by looking at this report to see whether or not you have enough savings already accumulated in vacancy, that can enable a department to say, well, okay, I already have this savings, I'm going to go ahead and hire that position. In emergency departments where you have to have a position filled right away, that policy can be overruled. But the report hopefully helps in making those sort of personnel decisions. And again, vacancy we feel is important because there's so much expenditure that's involved in salary and benefits, that being able to control that number and to analyze it to see where we're at is very important. Now, there we go. Like I said, every pay period, this report goes out, and this is the first half of it. There'll be one coming out at the end of this week. And if you want to see this report, you're not an office holder, you're not a department head, you can go to the budget office page on the Greene County website. And the 2 most current reports will always be there posted for you. The first half of the report shows savings by office holder. Courts and juvenile are combined together as one collective office. And then we have all of the other office holders in line. Justin, that rascal who doesn't know how to keep from spending money, is the only one that's in the red here. But I'm going to attribute this to either an error on my part in budgeting or to the volatility in trying to budget group insurance, because that can be difficult. It's going to play a little bit of part this year because we did have the increase in contributions to HSAs, which again, I think commission for wholeheartedly, being a member of that. But that does play a part in the fluctuation of the budget when it comes to benefits. We really look at the totals column. If you look at, and what made you catch your eye right away on that is the sheriff number, and you think, well, why are these numbers in the red? Well, it's because of all the new people in the jail, all the new detention officers that are difficult to hire on. And so he has been taking care of covering those shifts with people in GR1 and LEST, and, incentivizing them to help cover with overtime pay. And so he's still $650,000 above what his vacancy was budgeted at. So he's got the funds to continue doing that, and he's entitled to do that for as long as it takes to get those positions covered. The main number to look at here is the total at the bottom. The total of GR and LEST vacancy in excess of budget is over $1.8 million. And so that's a very healthy, nice number to see. In the end, we can look at that as helping to contribute to the overall cash balance at the end of the year. The second half of the report breaks down all the commission departments because they've got a lot of people that report under them, and it's hard to look at one commission number and know how your own department is doing. I will say that there's nobody's in the red here except for a very few number of departments, and they're all less than $500. And again, most of this is attributable to group insurance and the way that we have to budget it and estimate it for unfilled positions. And again, the HSA contributions, although we're only a few months into that, will begin playing a part into that discrepancy as well. Road and Bridge has its own number here. They're their own fund. And you can see that they've got a substantial amount of vacancy, and it's because of the trouble that they've had with hiring workers as well through the course of the year. And then at the bottom report, I always try to list the departments that would not normally contribute to this because of them being grant funded departments. We're always going to count on reimbursements for their personnel to come in. So we really can't use their vacancy savings and spend that in our business. That is vacancy in a nutshell. And so with that, I'm going to present to the heart and soul of the budget office.
I know we're running out of time, so I'll keep this really brief, quick for everybody. Next is sales tax. Federal boarding revenue is one of those other revenue lines that we monitor really heavily, and we rely on this. Our budget is over $9 million with an average Fed count of 310. And we use that 310 number, Fed count, in our 20-year resolution plan. So we rely on this very heavily, especially when we're planning out for the next 20 years. The year to date that we received so far is 2.7 million with an average count of 188. This is January through June. We don't have July numbers yet because that hasn't been submitted. So our year to date, our average in June is 155. This is exactly half of where we should be. This is kind of scary. There's no control over federal housing numbers. The sheriff's office can't say, hey, we have to have 310. We'd like them. They can't control it. So what can we do? Well, here's what we can do. The sheriff's office is right now in the middle of a contract negotiation. They are working with the Summerall Group. They're working on our behalf to renegotiate that. The application was submitted with the United States Marshal Service about a month ago. We should hear something within the next few weeks. So we should keep you updated on what that contract negotiation is. And just a reminder, we currently pay $80 per federal inmate per day. Or we receive $80 per federal inmate. With the new jail open, they're communicating regularly with the United States Marshal Service to let them know, hey, we've got the room, we need more inmates. Send those federal inmates to us. How do we monitor this? So right now, if you're looking at January through December, 768,800 is January. Well, that's 31 days times 80. 768,800. We're at 236,160 behind budget, planned budget for January. Through June, we're at 1.7 million behind budget. By the end of this December, if we keep this 155 average rate, we're going to be at 4 million behind budget. That's according to plan. That's a bleak number, but this doesn't represent everything for the county. We have expenses that can, have savings that we can negatively impact this. So.
So
I'm gonna turn it over.
this is basically the three weaknesses that we identified for the budget, for the group to monitor to see how we're doing. It's 8:42. So that takes us to the actual know your numbers part of this, where we ask office holders and department heads to talk about what's going on in their offices. And so what we've done is every week we're going to look at the 10 largest percentage differences from budget that we haven't already discussed. So there's four possible explanations. One, we have heavy spending early that will be at or under budget by the end of the year. So typically, like a capital item, pay for that whole capital item early in the year, you're at 100% of budget, but that takes care of it. Two, spending that will be over budget, but made up with savings in another category in the same fund within your budget. So it can be handled within the department or office. A spending that will be over budget that commission has already approved using contingency. And then finally, spending anticipated to be in excess of budget that needs to be presented to commission. So what we've done, instead of sending out reports to every office holder and department head and making you estimate what your ending balance is going to be, we've done a download, and instead we're comparing July is 58% through the year. And so we're looking at your spending versus your individual department lines and seeing what percentage those are. And so 51s, and we thought that this would be a good learning experience for everybody, is by talking about the type of expenditure. So 51s are personnel, and we're letting the vacancy talk about our personnel. So what we're doing is looking at the 52s through the 58s. 52 is contracts, 53 is training travel, 54 is maintenance, 55 is supplies, 56 is capital, 57 is other, 58 is grants. And so when we look at this, we're 58% through the year, which is that top percentage on the far right. I've got 75% there. 75% is actually the cutoff to get us to the top 10. So there are lines on here, like for the 31st Circuit Court, if you look at 56 capital, they're at 66%, but we're not going to ask them to talk about that today because there's others that are higher. So we're just limiting that to 10%. So please look at your lines as we go through here, but we don't have a lot of time, so we'll just go ahead and move on forward. That takes us to the first lines that are part of the 10%. So fortunately for us, we have the auditor's office showing up, so that's going to be a nice learning experience for us. Cindy, it's showing that your training and travel is 122% of budget and that your overall auditor total is 113% of budget. Which for 52s through 58s. Would you like to explain the situation to?
I'd be happy
Great.
to. So in the auditor's office, we are utilizing our vacancy savings to enhance the training for the office, and that's why the training budget is 122%.
So basically it's number one, or it's number two. It's going to be over at the end of the year. However, there's another line within the office budget that will keep her under total budget by the end of the year. The next one is the collector's office contracts. I see we got Alan in here. I know I had talked to Kevin about it, but we have 52 contracts. It's showing at 108%. Alan, you want to give us a simple educational?
May ask the auditor, I fund my salaries out of two different funds. I believe we start with 101, and then there's a journal entry that's made to pay the overage out of 233. So the total for the year, I should be good. It's just not 101.
Yep. So he's showing currently being over, but by the end of the year, he anticipates being at budget. So we've got another good expense, and we're going to make note of these so that we don't end up asking the same questions next time around. That takes us to the county clerk's office on the capital line. We're showing 100%. Is there somebody? Shane's right there. Shane, you want to tell us about the good news going on there? That's right. So 5 years of paying our election equipment. We've had our payment already. It matched exactly budget. It's two different funds, but we're there, and that's why he's over, but he anticipates being at budget by the end of the year. That takes us to countywide expenditures. So this is a non-departmental expenditure and it's training and travel. And actually the majority of the expenses there are something that Angie manages on behalf of the county. Angie, would you like to talk about that?
Sure, that's my fuel line right now and all of my funds. We currently have 270 vehicles. This time last year, we had 247. For my budget for this year, I had budgeted $2.05 cost per gallon. That's what the trend said nationally, and so I budgeted that way. And our cost per gallon average to year to date is $3.25. So it's killing me in my fuel line. Our usage is up just a little bit because we have a little bit more cars, but some of that will resolve itself. But I'm hoping that to offset that in my maintenance because luckily maintenance has been low, knocking down our wood. That will stay.
Everybody find some wood. That's important.
Yeah. Eat on that. So I'm hoping that will offset our expenditure in fuel.
Now, without the maintenance savings, we would anticipate being over budget by the end of next month. But with Angie watching this, we'll know when we are looking at possibly being over, and at that time, we'll ask commission to just authorize some more contingency to go towards that type of speed. The next one here isn't highlighted because it's got a division arrow. It's 58, which is an other category. It's typically grants, but in this case, it's another category, and that's for maintenance of Jamestown. Nothing was budgeted, and so that's why it's showing over. So obviously, that's going to be something we need to talk to commission about an authorization for. That takes us to the highway department. We've talked to Crystal about this. Crystal, you're here today? Online, Crystal? No, okay. So this is contracts. And we've talked to Crystal about this, and what this is, it represents the municipal distributions in majority. And so the majority of the municipal distributions go out towards the beginning of the year, and that's why this is over the 52% they expect to be under by the end of the year. And that takes us to the prosecuting attorney. Dan's here. Dan, we're showing maintenance items at 88% of budget and capital items at 599%. Would you like to?
Yeah, I think the capital is in a wrong item, wrong line. I'm gonna have to look at that. On the equipment and maintenance, that's because a lot of our computer expenses come from.
The capital line item is actually something that's been approved by commission. And what we had was in Fund 216, we have some laptops that get replaced every year. And we're using the equipment reserve out of 216, which is now LEST, to pay for those. So it wasn't in the budget, but it's already on the commission to approve the use of those capital items. And so that's been adjusted for and we'll show up next time.
Good, I assume coming out of that. So that's why I'm surprised.
So, yeah, so it's showing up against budget as a difficulty, but we'll address that next month so it doesn't show up, and that's going to be taken care of by equipment reserve.
Good, I will stop my search.
The public administrator, we have a capital line item. It's about $848 over what was budgeted in capital. We have, Sherry, are you here today? Okay. Oh, there we go.
I can't. She did in school.
Okay, so they have vacancy savings right now. Vacancy savings looks like it will be more than enough to cover the small overreach on their capital purchases that they completed throughout the year. And so they should end up below overall budget by the end of this year. So really, there's a couple items to watch, the fuel, and then me taking something for Jamestown maintenance to commission. And that's where it puts us. So when we look, we're 54% through the year. We've spent 33 million out of 61 million. We're actually 4% to the good because we should be at 58%. So across all funds, that adds up to 2,246,937. So we're doing better. To wrap all this up into kind of a dashboard type thing, we haven't made a dashboard yet, but sales tax is looking 6.8 million better than budget. Vacancy right now for just GR and LEST is 1.8 million. That doesn't include the extra vacancy that Road and Bridge has and the extra vacancy that the assessor's office has. Federal boarding's about 4 million down. And by the know your numbers, we're showing ourselves in GR1 and LES, or GR and LEST as being about $682,000 to the good. I think the highway's big number gets backed out. And so overall, in what we're monitoring, we're showing about 5,244,000. So that's a big smiley face on the dashboard. Dashboard hasn't been developed, but so all in all, we're doing very well. We have the tools to monitor our potential weaknesses, and we're getting wisdom from the crowd on all of your other unique numbers. And I believe I ran over like at least 7 minutes. That's what we got.